So again, welcome everybody. Thank you for being here today. And I'm going to start off with a very important question. You don't have to raise your hand or anything, but I think I already know the answer to it. But how many of you like pizza? You can raise your hand if you like. Everybody, right? Everybody pretty much likes pizza. Good pizza anyway. Well, here are some interesting statistics. Each year in the United States, 3 billion pizzas are sold. And each person consumes an average of 46 slices per year. That's an average person. Personally, I think I'm above average. 350 slices of pizza are sold every second in the United States. Annual pizza sales each year average somewhere around $32 billion. And 252 million pounds of pizza are consumed just on pizza every year. So that's a lot of pizza, right? I happen to love very thin crust pizza that we get occasionally from Nellie's Place, which is a restaurant in Waldwick, New Jersey, not far from here. And you can go to Nellie's for dinner as a restaurant. You go to Nellie's for dinner and you have one of these thin crust pizzas as an appetizer before your meal. And it's really divine. It's really wonderful. You order your pizza, and after a brief wait, the waitress comes, or the server comes, I should say, and she returns with it, and it's all crispy and gooey and oily and hot, and it smells really wonderful, and you dive in, right? And now at Nellie's Pizza, in Nellie's Pizza, they're cut into 16 slices, very small, thin slices. And because it's so thin and because the slices are so small, it's kind of deceiving, right? Especially as an appetizer, because you can sit and eat and eat and eat, and suddenly the pizza is all gone. And then along comes the server with your main course, your other food, that burger or whatever it is you ordered. But now you're completely stuffed on pizza, so you wind up pretty much taking most of your main course home with you in a container. So eating Nellie's Pizza really takes some skill, a little experience in the zen of pizza eating. It requires knowing when to say enough is enough and to stop and let go and stop eating it. And Nellie's Pizza always tastes better, right, on the second day. You stop eating because you know that something else is going to come along. And if you take it home, you can, Nellie's Pizza home, it's better on the second day. Like most pizza is really better on the second day. Personally, I happen to even like cold pizza. Most college students, I think, would remember, if you went to college and you had pizza, you remember having cold pizza in the morning. The problem is, it's not easy to stop eating that pizza. There's just something about picking up that next slice, even when it's hot and the oil burns your lips and the roof of your mouth. But if you want to enjoy the rest of the meal, you have to let the pizza go. The zen of eating a Nellie's Pizza, though, is very much like the zen of everyday life. Quite often, we find ourselves in a place where we need to let go. That's what that song was just about, that Carrie Newcomer sang. Breathe in, breathe out, let it go. In Buddhism, this concept is spoken of as non-attachment or detachment. Those phrases, particularly detachment, have entered into our popular culture vocabulary to such a degree that it really requires a little bit of explanation if we really want to understand it and apply it to our lives in a useful way every day. Think about what you think when you hear that word detachment. When most people think of detachment today, they usually mean that they're giving up on something or someone. They're going to forget all about it. And usually that's done out of anger or hurt feelings or frustration. How many of you have done this? Or maybe you're doing this right now with something in your life. I know I have. How's it working? Another way that people misunderstand the concept of detachment is in thinking that the person detaching simply doesn't care anymore. And this is often the way people think about Buddhism in general, or those traditions that teach a similar idea. The reality is that almost all traditions teach this concept, but it doesn't mean not caring. In fact, it's quite often an expression of real care and love. I'll give you an example. Our youngest child, Jake, is now 29 years old. It's hard to believe. He's 29 years old. But when Jake was growing up, Jake was a handful for various reasons. He was a handful. And I became very attached to Jake, watching everything all the time, keeping an eye on him, as we say, questioning things that he did all the time, questioning, where are you going? What are you doing? All those things. And to be honest, it became an issue between the two of us, especially as he got older. It even became an issue after he was in Tennessee for a while, then moved back and was home again. But he was, in his mid-20s by now. And I still had that attachment. It's been very hard for me over the years to detach from Jake. He's back in Tennessee now, so I really have no choice. It's been hard to allow him to grow into the person that he's becoming. And that person is someone that I really love and respect now. And I did too earlier, but he's growing up and I can get it. I'm becoming better at it. But I have a great deal of invested in that attachment to Jake. I'm getting better at it, detaching from Jake, not out of an I don't care attitude though, but out of an understanding that if I don't detach, if I don't let go, I won't be able to make room for other things that life brings my way, and neither will he. My attachment is harmful to both of us in that sense, if it continues, and to our relationship. And so perhaps there are relationships in your life that are like this, or situations in your life that are like this. Maybe a family member, maybe a coworker or a boss, maybe a neighbor. The thing is, these relational attachments don't all have to be to people we like. We can keep ourselves attached to people who hurt us, who get us angry, who make our lives miserable. Now, sometimes we can literally just walk away from them. We can change jobs if that's possible. We can move out of the neighborhood. We can get a divorce. We can unfriend someone in life or on social media like Facebook, as they call it now. But quite often, we're not in a position to do those things, right? There aren't any jobs out there. We're not in a position to move. We can't leave a spouse or a partner for whatever reason, and can't unfriend someone. Yet we can still detach, and we can do it without anger and those other negative emotions. We can detach, to use a phrase that's used in Al-Anon. We can detach with love. It seems like it would be a difficult thing to do most of the time, especially when we're talking about those people who get us really angry or frustrated. But I suggest that detachment without love is not detachment. It's just still anger. If you're trying to detach without it, if you're doing so out of frustration or anger or fear or resignation, then you're still attached, whether you admit it or not. And that attachment, while not outwardly visible or apparent, will sink deeper and deeper into the soul and fester there. And the same thing applies to situations in our lives: physical illness, financial stress, worry. All of these and more bring up in our lives what's called in Tibetan Buddhism shenpa, a hook. I've spoken about this in the past. And when you try to detach without love, it's hard to pull apart, right? And when you do, it's really annoying. You know what attachment is like? If you grew up in this area, maybe you remember going to Palisades Amusement Park as a kid. You know, I was at Palisades Amusement Park all the time. And there was one ride that I really loved, and it was called the Rotor. Now, the Rotor, if you remember it, it was this big round thing, and they would open a door and you would walk in, and there's the floor, and it was all empty except the walls were all black around this thing, and you would stand against the wall, and the wall was in a sense a little bit sticky. It wasn't really Velcro, but it was a little sticky, and you'd stand against the wall, and then the room, when they started the ride, it would go around, and it would spin faster and faster and faster and faster, and you couldn't pull away from the wall because of the centrifugal force, right? You couldn't pull away from the wall, and then the floor would drop, and you'd be stuck on that wall and be going around and around and around. And I mean, the floor didn't drop very far, maybe, 6 feet or so, but the floor wasn't there anymore, and you were just hanging on that wall because of centrifugal force. And it was fun to try to push off the wall and maybe jump down onto the floor. I never could do it. Not many people could, because it was so strong. But that's what attachment is like. We try to pull away, but the centrifugal force of that attachment just keeps us there. It takes an incredible amount of energy to break free. Detachment with love is a gradual process, though. It's a recognition that the person involved is also a person in pain, and that our attachment contributes to that pain. Imagine your neighbor with, maybe you have a long-standing problem. I don't know. We've had those kinds of neighbors over the years. It can be anything. Maybe she constantly lets her dog run into your yard to do his business. And you've asked her, you've cajoled her, you've told her not to do this, but she continues to allow it. There's that shenpa, that hook, that attachment to the anger at your neighbor. So how do you attach from love? With love, rather, from that anger at the neighbor? Not to mention those piles that are all in your backyard now. It's not simple. It doesn't even seem normal. The American Buddhist teacher Lama Surya Das, he writes this. He says, the Buddha said we experience the peace of nirvana by letting things be as they are. Indeed, applying the Beatles' exhortation to let it be to our own lives can bring a lot of serenity and equanimity. He says, my own personal Buddhist bumper sticker is breathe, relax, and smile. It works for road rage and for diminishing all kinds of problems. Repeat after me, breathe, relax, and smile. Now that's not so hard, is it? Well, I have news for Lama Surya Das. It's hard for me. I've got Buddhist bumper stickers all over my car. Doesn't necessarily make me a better driver. So it's hard, but it's something we have to try to do. And of course, if it were that easy, we'd all be enlightened by now, right? Letting go, letting be, embodying the Buddhist term non-attachment, it greatly reduces and alleviates suffering. In fact, it's the goal of Buddhism. Buddha taught that the cause of our suffering is craving and attachment. And so letting go of our tight-fisted grasping is in our own self-interest, because it helps erode those feelings of dissatisfaction and anxiety that we have. It's like holding on tightly to something that's always slipping through my fingers for me. It just gives me rope burn, but letting go, non-attachment, relieves that constant painful irritation. A good example of this is not being able to fall asleep at night, because you keep turning something over and over in your mind. It's one of those times when letting go is obviously a necessary virtue. I do that constantly. I don't know about you. The process of detachment is also intimately tied up with the understanding of non-permanence and emptiness. Detachment with love doesn't mean that you put on a happy face and act as if nothing needs to change. It's the opposite. When you allow yourself the space to be open, to love that person, to feed compassion, to feel compassion for that person, you open a space that allows for new ways of seeing a situation and a person, a new way of resolving conflict. Maybe in the case of the neighbor and her dog, you might find that it opens a door to sit and talk with this person in a way you never have before, maybe over a cup of coffee or tea, maybe just over the fence. Back to Nellie's Pizza. The point of going to Nellie's is to eat the pizza and enjoy it. We don't go to Nellie's so we can feel guilty about eating pizza, about our relation to that crispy, gooey, cheesy slice of heaven. We're there to enjoy. And we're there to enjoy what follows, to do what we need to do, and to let go, to have room for the rest of what is offered. And that's the point of life. To experience, to enjoy, to receive, and share that joy with others. We're not here to cling to or remain attached to anything good or bad. It's that clinging, right? That attachment that prevents us from really experiencing all that life has to offer and all that we have to offer. It reminds me of the story of the grasping monkey. You remember you've heard it. It's not not really a story, just a brief thing where a monkey is running around and he's reaching into the jars and taking out food that he wants. But at the bottom of this one jar, there's a really, really big coconut, right? And he really wants it. Now in his hand, he's already got a smaller coconut that would be fine. He can get it out of the jar, but he sees that big coconut and he wants that big coconut. So he drops the small coconut and he picks up the big coconut, but unfortunately he can't get it out of the jar because now his hand won't leave the jar. It's stuck in there. Underneath in the jar now is that small coconut that he dropped. And he has to make a choice. How is he going to get that coconut out of the jar? He's got to put down that big coconut and be satisfied with the small one. Now, if he's a smart monkey, he'll obviously break the jar, but it's just a story, folks. So think about it. Maybe today you're holding on to something that's keeping you from enjoying anything else. So think about letting it go. I know it's not easy. Believe me, I know it's not easy. It's very often that I act like one of those monkeys. And I need to be reminded of this. But if we can put this into practice in our lives, we'll all be better for it. Our families will be better for it. Our community will be better for it. And probably the world will be better for it too. So before I close, I want to speak briefly about stewardship, since today is our annual Stewardship Sunday. And I want to talk about that word steward. It comes from the Koine Greek word. Koine Greek is the ancient Greek that they spoke, and that was the Christian scriptures were written in, not only the Christian scriptures, but the Christian scriptures were written in Koine Greek. And it's the Greek word used there for steward is oikonomos, which meant the manager of a household. And it was a very important position. It was a position of trust. And usually it was given to one of the more trustworthy slaves of a large household to manage the affairs of the household, to make sure that things were being purchased properly, they were getting the best price, to make sure that things were being done properly. It would be like what the head butler of an estate would be, you know, that kind of a thing. And so stewardship is from the word oikonomia, which refers to the proper management of household affairs. And it's made of two words, oikos and nomos. Oikos, which means house, and nomos, which means law or rule. And we get the word economy, economics from that word, oikonomos, oikonomia. The word membership derives from the original Greek word milos, meaning a member as in the part of a body, and particularly a part like a leg or a foot or a head. In fact, if you read the Christian scriptures, you'll see where Paul refers to the church as the body of Christ. And all of those limbs and legs and all that, they all have a special function, and they're all important to the proper functioning of the whole body. And in later centuries, the word took on the meaning of being part of a corporate body, like an organization, a civic organization, or a religious organization like a church or a synagogue. Being a member means that everyone has a role, an important part in the organization. And that's true of our small but mighty congregation of UUCP. And one of those important functions is stewardship, assisting with the financial functioning and the needs of the congregation. When one becomes a member of UUCP, part of the commitment that's made is to assist as able by pledging a financial contribution each year. And it might seem that the financial burdens of running UUCP are less because we haven't been meeting in person for a while, and we don't have as many financial obligations as in the past. That's actually not the case. There are still financial obligations to be met. And Donna Bono later will talk about those and about pledging in a few minutes after the announcements. But I want to encourage you today to continue your financial support this coming year as you are able. We are all members and stewards of this beloved community, and your help is needed to keep it going. Please remember that. In closing, I just want to read. This is the Buddhist Compassion Sutra, a version that's printed in our hymnal, number 598. May every creature abound in well-being and peace. May every living being, weak or strong, the long and the small, the short and the medium-sized, the mean and the great, may every living being, seen or unseen, those dwelling far off, those living nearby, those already born, those waiting to be born, may all attain inward peace. Let no one deceive another. Let no one despise another in any situation. Let no one from antipathy or hatred wish evil to anyone at all. Just as a mother with her own life protects her only child from hurt, so within yourself foster a limitless concern for every living creature. Display a heart of boundless love for all the world in all its height and depth and broad extent. Love unrestrained, without hate or enmity. Then as you stand or walk, sit or lie down until overcome by drowsiness, devote your mind entirely to this. It is known as living the life divine. May it be so.
If you enjoyed this video, please like us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel, and click on the bell to be notified whenever we post a new video.